Well, here they are. I'm told this is the best kept secret in Kildare for the last 2.5 years. And here we have 2 cruising back again. The first one is cruising Arish, and the second one is cruising Encore. With a lot of deliberation and looking into it from all parts of the world, for about 2 or 3 months, we decided that we would have the biopsies taken from cruising and stored. It took some thought about it. It's a very expensive thing. The one reason for us thinking of doing that was the fact that cruising's genes had proven in his own ability to jump and in the ability of his offspring as event horses and show jumpers to be at the top of their tree. His genetics were obviously needed back in Ireland again. So we decided there and then that, having taken the biopsies, that we would try to clone cruising. It's a very, very expensive undertaking, and it wasn't taken lightly. It's a very technical process and obviously handled by high-class technicians. And they basically, what happens is they took 4 biopsies off cruising's neck, and they are then sent to the laboratory where they are put into a medium and cultured. And eventually what happens is that once they start the cells start to divide, they take the eggs from a mare and they totally flush out all the DNA out of those eggs, and they implant into the egg the DNA of cruising that is growing. The biggest laugh I had really was that we were asked to take cruising to the RDS this year, and of course he has 4 little holes in his neck because he had a little stitch in each hole after it was done. And I was sure that somebody would see them, but nobody seemed to cop on. So whether everybody out there in the country has no idea of a cloning or whether they just didn't notice, I don't know, but they were very definitely there and very easy to see. It actually wasn't our intention to have 2. Obviously, if you get 1 and you're delighted with that. But the fact remains is that the way it's done, they start off with about 11 embryos going into about 11 mares. And then, like all embryos, along the way you lose a few. So at the end of the day, we ended up with 2. We do find that déjà vu is a little bit startling. They both have different characteristics of cruising, and it's quite a shock. You're going by and one of them does something and you sort of turn around and look at them and say, where in the name of God did they get that from? And it is, you see it all the time, you see it a lot in their walk and in the way they'll turn around and look at you. I hope to God they don't buck as many people off as he did when he started. We'll be in fierce trouble. But they definitely have a lot of similarities. Some different ones. Cruising always had the habit of, when he was going into the ring to jump, or even in the stable and something you gave out to him, that he'd flap his lips together. And one of them is already doing it. So I just couldn't believe it the other day. He looked at me over the door and I gave out to him and he flapped his lips at me. So I don't know what that means, but it's quite startling when you do see these things. Keeping it secret for 2.5 years, well, I thought it wouldn't be easy, but in actual fact it was very easy, because people used to come in and see them looking over the doors and say, what are they? And I used to turn around and say, they're cruising. And I think they just thought, oh, they're by cruising, haven't they got nice heads? And off they went, and that was it. Nobody turned around to ask me, what do you mean they're cruising? I just said they're cruising, and that was accepted. When we started and we had to put a name on them as foals, I didn't know what to do, and I, like a fool, I think, said we call one Rooster and the other Booster. And actually it was stupid because it was so close together that it was really a very silly thing to do. But Rooster and Booster, they've remained, and when you're shouting at one, you're trying to say the wrong name. So I think it was a very foolish thing to do. But they now are named properly, and the one with the white socks and the white face is cruising Arish, which has to be spelt, unfortunately, because there's no father on the computers. It has to be spelt with an H on the end phonetically, so I hope the Irish-speaking people don't give out to me about that. And then we had the other fella, and he's called Cruising Encore. I think they're 2 nice names, and we did want to try and keep the cruising with it, that people would realise they were there. And my daughters here have them now lunging, whether well or not well, I don't know, but they're going nicely round, and they're very mannerly. They can be a bit cheeky, and they're maturing well. And hopefully now we'll get them out for the summer somewhere and get them out on a good field of grass. And they really mature, but they're big enough. One is 16.1 and the other's just over 16 hands, so they're only 2.5. They were July foals. We haven't jumped them yet. As everybody knows, I'm dead against jumping 3-year-olds. So they won't jump until they're properly 3 anyway, towards the end of the year. And let's hope that they have some of the pieces that of cruising in them, and the pieces that we took from cruising are going to have the jumping bean in them, and we'll go on from there. But I'm not going to be pushing them in any way, and it remains to be seen. A lot of these people aren't jumping them, and I would think that if they look as if they have a really nice pop in them somewhere during the summer, that we'd probably, they'll definitely be broken, because they'd be so much easier to handle. And if they look as if they have a jump in them, we might take them round and jump them 4-year-olds. I don't know. It's very costly, you know, to get horses up the lines now, and certainly we'll just have to wait and see who uses them and what happens after that. We've already had, I did tell a couple of people that they were there, and we've already had a couple of oldish mares that have already bred good cruisings that are coming to us, because we will certainly cover a few mares this year, but obviously we'll be picking and choosing nice mares. So anybody out there that has a really good mare that's up in the grades and maybe that has a cruising before, it would be lovely to see what way that would work out. In deciding to do this, you've got to realise that this is keeping the genetics of cruising going. And we would never have done it, as I say, only that we felt it was needed. But the fact remains that the most recent one, if you like, with cruising's genetics is Judge and Jury, which I'm sure a lot of people know. Was bred here at Hartwell by Armitage out of cruising mare Tamarara. She also bred the champion show horse in Ireland this year, and she also bred Santa Cruz. So she was something to really think about. But Judge and Jury has now been sold from the Billy Stud in England. He has been sold to McLean Ward in America for a reputed $1.5 million. So, I mean, even if you only get a few like that with the genetics that are needed, in Ireland, we need him, especially in the mares. I only had a phone call this morning from a person in the north saying that he had one cruising mare, and did I know where he'd be able to buy another? And that happens to me all the time. We also, he has proven so good. Don't forget, in America, he had Flexible as the leading show jumper of the year, as well as Mr. Medicott was the leading event horse of the year. So, I mean, that is it's never been done before, and it'll probably never be done again. And even to go back to Seacrest, Cruising's father, and these fellas' father as well, in Rome, he had cruising jumping in Rome, and he also had Ladaka, who was on the eventing team. So it's a little bit unusual, and we all know cruising was a little bit of an unusual horse, and hopefully these genetics are going to be used, and we can go on and have a little more of good horses in Ireland again. I'm hoping that the traditional Irish horse people will now be pleased with this, because I can't help it if they're not. And we're obviously going to get some people that are very pleased about it, and we're going to get some people that ethically think that it's wrong. Things change. I can remember when we started here with AI, I was down in Mill Street, and there was a very eminent stallion owner standing in front of me with 4 or 5 gentlemen around him that were obviously asking about his stallions. And he turned around and he said, and you know that Mary McCann up in Kildare? Well, she started to send semen down on the train. And it doesn't work, you know. I mean, this is madness. How can you put semen in a container and send it on the train and get mares in foal? But that was AI getting knocked in the head, and then when we started to do embryo transfer, the same thing happened. Now you have some very good horses out there that are jumping, admittedly, basically out of mares that are like the mares that have given the embryo, and they're at the top of their tree. So let's hope with a new thing now, we have cloning. I would hate to see a lot of horses cloned. In the beginning in the States, when they started cloning there, they were cloning for people that had a lot of money and maybe had their favourite child's pony and it was going to die and they wanted to clone it. But in the last 4 or 5 years, it's totally changed. And people are now cloning sport horses. Zangerside in Belgium have quite a few done, and in actual fact last year the first of the young Zangerside horses jumped in the stallion classes and the young horse classes in Zangerside in the World Breeding Championships. So they're going ahead, and it's happening, and what more can we do? There's only, I think, 3 good stallions. There's Cruising, there's Quidam de Revel, and there's one of Zangerzide's horses that have proven themselves to jump at that level and proven themselves to produce young stock at that level. So that for me was the thing that we had to go ahead with Cruising. If he'd been a gelding, I wouldn't have done it, because to my mind they have to prove that they're going to be sires before you start, and they have proven that they are good sires before they start. And I get so many phone calls, you've no idea, asking me, have you any traditional Irish horses? And if we can bring that back, even to be, for the first generation to be crossed with some of the better foreign horses, surely we're doing some good. We have to be doing some good. At the end of the day, we hope to bring the Irish sport horse and Irish breeding forward into the 21st century.